The goal is not to be healthy. The goal is to be. It's to use that physical well-being as a platform to fully show up for your life. Health is the tool, not the prize. And once you have that tool, the adventure is just beginning. Welcome to the Last Guru podcast, the podcast for all those curious and passionate about spirituality, which explores human potential from an evolutionary perspective, but also helps address life's practical problems at a higher level of knowledge. Today, we are diving into a really powerful philosophy of healing, one that totally challenges our modern obsession with health information. It argues that the real path to wellness, well, it isn't about knowing more, but about truly knowing ourselves.
Okay, let's just let that sink in for a minute. In an age where we have literally endless health data right at our fingertips, what if our constant search for more information is actually the problem? What if it's pulling us away from the very wisdom we need to heal? So, this brings us to what the source material calls information bulimia. We're constantly consuming health facts, diet plans, and wellness tips, and we're operating under this assumption that knowing more is automatically going to help us live better. But here's the twist. The core argument here is that all this constant mental processing, this obsession with data, macros, and studies, it just overrides the intuitive wisdom that our own bodies have. We get stuck in our heads, and when we do that, we lose the connection to what our bodies are actually trying to tell us. And this intellectual obsession, it leads to a very, very common trap. We get stuck on the ground floor of healing. We start fixating on all the tiny, often trivial details. And this is especially true when it comes to diet. I mean, come on, you know the questions I'm talking about, right? We get caught up in this endless cycle of micro questions, treating nutrition like it's some kind of complex puzzle that we have to solve perfectly. And all that does is turn food into a source of anxiety instead of nourishment. And it completely misses the bigger picture. So this is so crucial. Getting your diet right is just the starting point. It's the launch pad. It's absolutely essential for getting off the ground, but it is not the journey itself. The real work, the real healing, that happens on a much higher level. So if diet is just the start, what's the real enemy we should be focusing on? Well, according to this philosophy, it all comes down to a single, powerful biological process that pretty much underpins most of our modern diseases. This is the key. The primary goal of any healing journey shouldn't be to perfect a diet. It should be to shut down the factory inside of us that is producing chronic, low-grade inflammation day in and day out. And what's fueling this factory? It's primarily our diet's effect on our hormones. A diet that is constantly spiking our insulin creates what the source calls a storm inside the body, and it generates this massive inflammatory response. Now just look at how this visualizes the daily battle. It's fascinating. A typical breakfast, a cappuccino and a croissant, it triggers this huge inflammatory spike. But in contrast, a breakfast based on protein and fat, like eggs and coffee, it keeps your metabolism stable. You are effectively closing the inflammation factory for the morning instead of firing it up. The difference is night and day. So let's say we stop fueling that inflammation. What happens next? Well, to understand the journey of illness and healing, we need a map. And that brings us to the 6 predictable phases the body moves through. Now, this model, it's known as homotoxicology. It sounds complicated, but the idea is actually really simple. It suggests that illness isn't just a collection of random isolated symptoms. No, instead, it's a predictable journey the body takes as it becomes more and more overwhelmed by toxins and inflammation. It moves from simple reactions to deep cellular dysfunction. And this illustrates that path brilliantly. You see, it starts with a healthy response. The body excretes toxins. If that fails, it mounts an acute inflammatory response. If the problem persists, the body starts depositing those toxins in our tissues, which leads to chronic issues, then degeneration, and finally, the most severe cellular phases. Let's make this really concrete with an example. A simple cough is just the body in that healthy excretion phase trying to get something out. But if that process gets overwhelmed, it can become acute bronchitis. That's the inflammation phase. And if it's not resolved, it can progress right down this ladder step by step from a chronic condition all the way to a severe degenerative disease. The key is understanding these are not separate illnesses. They're just stages of the same underlying process. So all of this, the diet, the inflammation, the phases of illness, it's all a framework to achieve one thing. But it's probably not what you're thinking. Healing the body isn't the final destination. It's the prerequisite for something much deeper. This is the true turning point. When you're no longer bogged down by fatigue and symptoms, you have a surplus of energy. And that energy isn't just for avoiding sickness, it's fuel. It's fuel for changing your character, for reconnecting with your purpose, and for truly, truly living.
So does this mean the objective is to build some kind of impenetrable fortress of health? To achieve a perfect, disease-free existence where we never have to face another symptom ever again? No, and this is the punchline of this entire philosophy. The goal isn't simply to be healthy, the goal is to be. To use our physical vitality as the foundation upon which we can fully exist, engage with the world, and fulfill our potential. Health is the means, it's not the end. The real question is, once you have it, what will you do with it? We look forward to seeing you at the next episode of The Last Guru to live with passion, because when the veil falls, trust and surrender reveal that no one is ever alone and never has been.